my first article here is actually from Entrepreneurship or noobpreneur.com. Anyway, it's one of those articles, kind of what the future of work and entrepreneurship will look like. And so basically they're talking about how from a world of sharing, where sharing is common, to a world of producing for one. And they're kind of talking about how leadership works after this pandemic ends, and kind of what leaders will need going forward in leading a team or leading a business. And so they're referencing a Deloitte study actually on leadership in the 21st century, and they're talking about what skills would be needed for leadership. So ability to lead through more complexity and ambiguity is the highest rated one. Ability to lead through influence, ability to manage on a remote basis, ability to manage a workforce with a combination of human and AI, and ability to lead more quickly, with an emphasis being on speed. Then the context of leadership, I guess, kind of what leaders are faced with as barriers or hurdles. New technologies, of course, is first. The pace of change, which seems to be always increasing. And then the changing demographic and employee expectations and changing customer expectations over this is last. So I just wanted to kind of get your guys' take on what you think the essential management, or if the pandemic has made a difference in, I guess, what employees are looking for and what leadership is requiring from entrepreneurs or the business landscape in general.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with the sentiment of the argument of the article, talking about the ability to lead through more complexity and ambiguity, because that's one thing that is just seems to be, through the roof right now is complexity and ambiguity. I also thought it was interesting talking about the article, or talking about the customer expectations, because those are kind of different now compared to before the entire pandemic. And so, yeah, it's interesting to think about. I think the new technology one is going to continue to be huge as companies just become more and more reliant on technology to do things they couldn't do, without being open.
In this article, or the study itself, and some of was this done before the pandemic or after it already started? Looks like it was done before.
Sorry, I'm on mute here trying to talk.
So we presented our work in the United Kingdom in November. So yeah, I think a lot of the data or the conclusions here was before the pandemic anyway. Which, yeah, I mean, that's not too surprising, but I just think for context, in terms of realizing that, I think what's interesting about that is if you view that in the light of the pandemic that we're happen to be in right now while we're filming this or recording this, is that it just makes you feel like these things are even more important, right? But most of the things on here are not like, they're not like surprising things. They're things that you would always hear people talk about it as important leadership attributes. I think what's interesting though is, it makes me question if I'm right about it. Yeah, it says this source, Deloitte Global Human Capital Trend Survey 2019. So in the middle of the graph that we're looking at here, the kind of one of the important factors was ability to manage on a remote basis. Mm-hmm. Right? That was like the third highest, most important factor before even considering a pandemic at that point. So I think that's kind of interesting. That I think maybe that speaks to my theorem that the pandemic isn't like creating new urgency. It's creating urgencies, but it's not creating new directions. It's just making some directions we were already going more urgent.
Totally. Yeah, I think work from home was already a good idea all along. This just accelerated it, like you said. Yeah,
I think it's an acceleration for all of it. I think it's an acceleration for like the online kind of interaction, and doing what we're doing right now over Zoom, accelerating like the remote work that has to happen, the remote, or I guess the paperless aspect of what everybody's doing. No longer can you just hand a note to somebody, or drop off a bill, or sign an invoice, or anything like that. It's accelerated basically what everybody had tools for a long time ago. And I think leadership also, where you have the ability to lead remotely or work remotely or enable those kind of tools to be enacted, yeah, this is definitely an acceleration period, I think, for all of that.
Well, and I think it's interesting to just think about how effective leadership will change as a result of the pandemic. Because it's like you might have somebody who is really good conversationally as a leader. You know, they're able to figure out what the issue is, but maybe over email, their written communication isn't as succinct or as clear. And so it's interesting to kind of think about how those roles are going to change as everyone gets more and more comfortable working from home.